friends. Good afternoon. This is another edition of the Andrew Canlon Show. This time coming to you live, stomping grounds. I am here in beautiful Hudson Yards in Midtown Manhattan. You can see we have the vessel right behind me. This ode, of course, to Adam West Batman. We have this Shakespeare bust right behind me as well. So the atmosphere is fantastic. And of course, the atmosphere here in New York City is also fantastic with everything that's going on, all of the excitement surrounding my New York Knicks and them being one title. It's been phenomenal and it's been a lot of fun. The energy here is great. It's always great to be back home in New York and to be speaking to you guys directly about all things music and then all things that are just going on in my life as well, and in your lives. I want to thank you all so much for being a part of the journey. As always, I'm very grateful to be able to speak to you directly as me, no filter, no talking points, just good old fashioned communication and fun. So with that said, I am back in New York for a number of different reasons, all related to Tunes and Brews, which are the shows that my partner Casey and I have been producing here in New York, as well as a fundraiser for our friend Carrie Ann, who was one of our performers in New York at the Tunes and Brews showcases that we did in Long Island City. She was hosting a very cool fundraiser to raise money for those with special needs. She works in the medical field and helps people who have types of ailments to have a great quality of life and to be able to have access to treatments that can better their lives as well. So it was a very good cause, CP Unlimited. She also has a nonprofit that she calls Shigara that raises money for arts programs and for independent artists to do showcases like the ones that me and Casey are hosting. Casey, as you know, also goes by the stage name MZUNGU. And he and I were in the studio last night working on our first ever collaboration in Brooklyn. And it was absolutely phenomenal to finally get in the studio with my good buddy. And he's become a business partner as well as we move forward and we try to host more shows and increase the quality of those shows. So it's a very exciting time for us. There's a lot going on for sure. And just being back in New York is always a great opportunity for me. So I'm so happy to be here and to kind of fill you guys in on everything that's going on. But before I get any further, I do want to have a toast. And as always, I go with a traditional margarita with salt on the rim. Cheers to you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for being here on this journey. I'm going to toast to you, the fans, the audience, the community. Cheers to you guys. Boy, that is good. So right on. As I mentioned, I've been living in Nashville. I moved to Nashville back in December. And ever since, we've been getting opportunities here in New York to come back every couple of weeks to host these showcases at Trends and the local. And we finally decided, let's put together a formal business plan for this. Let's try to really form something that we can do regularly, with our vendors, with our musicians, with all of the partners that we've accrued over the years that would want to be these shows. And it's been really rewarding to connect with people who have that similar passion, who have that similar drive and ambition to, want to kind of inject that culture of live music back into New York City. And as we know, with the rise of electronic music, DJs being super prevalent and other types of shows, for the ultra wealthy that have kind of permeated the performance space and sort of forced a lot of the smaller venues to close and all of that sort of stuff. We're really trying to create this middle ground. How can people have access to high quality performances? How can we as organizers form a label or a collective of artists who, are excited about what we're doing and want to be a part of it and want to put on a great show. And I think you guys saw that with Chocolate Brown. I think you saw that with Miss Yato and the last show at Trends that we did. what we realized right away is that we have really played a key role in helping build this community of musicians. So when Casey and I got in the studio last night, writing down these lyrics, it was all about, uh, kind of speaking about the embattled music community, speaking about artists who are incredibly hardworking, studious, well-educated, well-meaning, talented, and they're willing to do everything they need to do to pursue this life. And all the tools are there. All the tools are there for all of us to be successful. There's room for everyone, certainly, to be successful, and yet still, it's very, very difficult, for artists to have a lane to be financially successful, to have something sustainable. So, he and I have been really forming this collective and realized in the last several weeks that, we have some artists who, really have appreciated what we've done by putting these shows together, and they have our backs, and, they would show up for us, and we want to give them the best opportunities possible, which is why, without kind of saying anything that would breach confidentiality, there are discussions about other organizations getting involved with Tunes and Brews, organizations that would want to fund future Tunes and Brews shows. But Casey and I could actually have a budget where we could pay our artists, where we could actually, have our vendors paid as well, and everyone would stand a chance where we could continue to do this in a way that's sustainable. We love doing these showcases. We've been doing a lot of them, on our own steam with our own resources. And I think, again, without putting the cart before the horse and revealing anything, what I can tell you is that since being here in New York, I have had some incredibly productive conversations with some organizations and companies that are incredibly well regarded in the music space. That want to get involved and want to put their dollars behind us. It's a very exciting time. It's an incredibly exciting prospect. I've already had calls this week that, are with major music brands that are basically telling me, we are a music company. We are not an event company. We are not doing what you're doing. And we're also not on the ground in a place like New York City or Nashville, right? They're in the same way that you are. And what we want to do is not only provide artists with, resources like instruments and microphones and hardware. Not only do we want to provide them with, experiences that will help them collaborate, but we really want to reach the audience. We really want to give something back to the fans. And that's where Casey and I come in. And I should start calling him by his stage name. That's where MZUNGU and I come in. And we start putting together shows that are backed by these organizations that hold a lot of clout in the music industry. And it's not just about clout. What this is about is putting together the resources that would allow us not only to grow as event organizers, but to also give an opportunity to artists and brands to come together and really elevate themselves, really be able to grow and market themselves in a way that doesn't feel corporate, it doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel inauthentic. What it's going to feel like is real and intimate and comfortable, and something that people are going to want to come back and experience again and again and again. So it's an incredibly exciting time. And we have reached that point in our operation where we are saying, we can't do this all ourselves. We can't do this on our own steam. We can do a lot. MZUNGU has an incredible work ethic. He's an incredibly intelligent guy. And when he says he's going to do something, he does it. And for him to have me as partner and vice versa, we just balance each other incredibly well, and we bounce off of each other incredibly well. Whether that's putting together a business plan for what the future of these shows are going to be with all of our partners, or having fun in the studio and saying, let's take a break from the business and let's get back to the business of making music. Let's have a good time, right? Let's knock back a couple beers. Let's get in there. Let's start riffing. Let's start doing the thing. Let's start making music. Let's cook. And last night was not only a great time because we had fun, it was also a great time because we wrote a great song. And, the fact that he and I haven't collaborated yet until now is totally mind blowing because we come together musically so well and we work together so seamlessly. You know, I'm just shocked that it went so well and pleasantly surprised. And shout out to MZUNGU, quickly becoming someone who I would consider a brother. I'd do anything for him, and I know he would do anything for me. And for the two of us to be working together and being very honest with each other as well about, hey man, we're going to have to get to know each other. We're going to have to be friends. We're going to have to really know everything about each other's lives, and be honest, because when you start doing stuff like this, uh, it's really important to know the ins and outs of a person, not just what they're capable of as a businessman, not just what they're capable of as a musician, as a producer, but also what they're capable of as a person, and how willing and honest they are to share their whole selves with you, because you're going into business together and it's a very nerve-wracking prospect. But at the same time, knowing someone, knowing their truest life story, knowing where they come from, he and I have definitely been, overcoming adversity and family traumas, and the city kind of being this nonstop pressure cooker that's always breathing down your neck, and you're always having to compete. It never stops. It never stops. And New York waits for no one. It's an exciting time right now. I see a lot of people in their 20s really excited because they haven't experienced this type of social buzz since they've been here. And, COVID is still something that is sort of reverberating, and the cities is starting to come alive again. It's a very, very dynamic time. Everything that Mayor Mandani is doing here is really exciting the youth. And, it's coming alive again in such a cool and powerful way. And so for us, the door is wide open to start to integrate with the scene here and really, really bring back that culture of authenticity and connectivity to the framework of New York City, and eventually Nashville as well. And I'm still very adamant about some events going, and shout out to Angie and Creative Pulse down in Nashville. Talks are ongoing about getting some showcases done in Nashville as well. So shout out to those guys. We're constantly brainstorming, and we're constantly circling the waters of something new. So I'll be back in Nashville in a few days, and I can't wait to dig into that as well and just get that going. So there's always a lot to do. And in the midst of all of this, I haven't really released any new music. I've been busy dealing with the operations of all of this stuff and trying to get these business pursuits off the ground. So Stargazer, if you've been following along on social media, is a track that I love, that I recently did a demo of, and I'm looking to get that done. I've got the song that Casey and I did, and then I also have my Justin Timberlake cover for the studio series, and that's coming together nicely as well. So the moment I get home, it'll be back to the studio, and it'll be trying to carve these projects out, get them up on YouTube for you guys. And I want to thank you for your patience, for waiting on these things. And there's always more music, there's always more content that you can create. So it's just one step at a time, one day at a time. For me, in some cases, it's 1 hour at a time. So that's the life of an artist, and it's an exciting one. And I am really, really stoked to share new works with you guys, as always. What else is going on? I'm going to take another sip of my margarita, and I want to challenge you today. Cheers. I want to challenge all of you guys to, continue to pursue your creative desires in life, and try to be true to yourselves, and be honest with yourselves about, where you fit in this world, and what you want to create, what you want to bring into the world. It's incredibly difficult to do anything different. It's incredibly difficult to be different. It's hard. I've never quite fit into any specific box or buckets. And what I can tell you is that eventually you start to march to the beat of your own drum. You start to become your own person by virtue of the fact that, you just don't seem to fit in any of these buckets. You kind of are a little bit of everything and altogether nothing at the same time. And that sounds very existential. But I think if I can say one thing that I'm really proud of, and sometimes I have to remember to give myself credit. I'm very hard on myself, and sometimes you don't need to be. Sometimes it's better and it's more productive to give yourself credit. And I'm very proud of myself this week for building new connections, not only within the music space, but with friends and with my musical collaborators. I'm very, very grateful to be able to share all this news with you guys. I'm also very grateful to have my family be so supportive of everything that I'm doing, and they are really truly the reason that I'm still here and I'm still producing content in this way. And as tired as I am, I think it's incredibly rewarding. I think there's always going to be time to take a vacation or start to materialize. But when you're in the building phase, it's really important to keep your nose to the grindstone. And here we are in the summer of 2026. One year ago, I was in a much different place in life, and I was vacationing in Italy, and I was married, and now I'm divorced, and I'm commuting back and forth between cities to on life and give myself new opportunities. And, as difficult and as challenging as it's been to do, it's also been incredibly good for my mental health to be able to have some separation from that lifestyle, because it was never important to me to take vacations and see friends and, do that sort of things. What I care about is creating music, creating new projects, because that's what is more fulfilling to me. If I'm going to travel the world again, it's going to take me a while. But it's also not going to happen unless there's a musical component to, if there's a reason for me to be there musically, I'll be there. But if it's purely for the sake of taking a vacation, to grandstand in front of other people or stuff like that, like, I want this really bad. Not in a desperate way, but in a very determined way. I have no interest in taking it easy. I have no interest in slowing down. I don't want to rest until I feel comfortable with the things that I want to produce. And I know that sounds stubborn and I know that sounds selfish, but that's in many ways what it takes to get things done. This laser focus, this determination, it can alienate you, and it can alienate people. Just have to be conscious of the fact that, you're doing it alone. It's not always going to be easy. There are going to be rough roads ahead, and you have to be emotionally prepared for criticisms. You have to be emotionally prepared for fallout. You have to be anxieties and sadness and grief. You spend time lamenting a life that was for the life that you dream about. Right. And I think, you know, all of the things that have happened within the last year have been sobering. There's no doubt about that. There are details about my life that I haven't shared publicly, but also, slowly develop the confidence and the trust to share those details publicly at some point, because I look forward to just being myself, and part of being yourself and being authentic is having the courage to just open the door and let people in. And these videos are often an exercise in doing that for me, and an exercise in kind of, I don't know, open, scary. It's scary. Changes in my life. And, maybe some of you are going through that as well. Maybe some of you are in a transition. Maybe your career is in a difficult spot. Maybe your relationships are in a difficult spot. And I just want to encourage you to keep rising above that and keep your shoulders, stay in the game, stay in the saddle, continue to work. 'Cause at the end of the day, no one can take that away from you. No one can ever take music away from me. And it's always going to be something that I have. And, learning all of the production tricks, learning my way around the studio. I mean, it has been invaluable. It's opened up opportunities with, collaborators and labels and PR firms and your, streaming firms. And all kinds of stuff, right? But yeah, it's been very, very exciting. And since started following along on the YouTube channel. The next project will be the studio series video. It would be a cover of What Goes Around by Justin Timberlake and Timbaland. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe. We're up to 15,000 subscribers. We've actually surpassed 15,000 subscribers total on YouTube, which is incredibly exciting. And I haven't really done much in the way of advertising this thing. I haven't really put any ads out there on YouTube, so this is all organic growth, and you guys seem to really be interested. So, I mean, I'm very flattered. I'm very happy and content with what I'm doing with the channel, and I really look forward to putting this one out. It's going to be much more involved, which is why it's taking a little bit longer. The sound quality, which I've teased a little bit on Instagram, I think you guys are going to flip out. This is going to be super cool, super cool. It's really, really vibey, and I haven't done something like this where I had to replicate a record that is iconic and try to replicate the sounds and kind of put you in that same space as the listener. And it's super exciting. It's hard. It's really challenging. And it's really giving me a lot of respect for the songwriting of those guys because, when I listened to that song, even dating back to when it first came out in high school, I remember thinking, okay, it's pretty straightforward. It's simple. There isn't a whole lot going on, right? Vocally, it's not all that complex. And then you try to sing it, right? And then you're trying to replicate the instrumentation and there are all kinds of challenges. It's hard. Like music making is really tough when you're trying to get yourself up to that standard and you're comparing yourself to the likes of Justin Timberlake and Timberland. So it's hard and I'm really eager to finish this one. But I am at the same time really taking my time and trying to be diligent because the more I clean it up and the more I get spin on it as well, my interpretation into the song is going to be really exciting. It's going to be this really cool fusion of Justin's probably version of it, but my cuts, my voice, my instrumentation. I'm just excited. By the way, if you find yourself here in Manhattan at some point, I highly recommend stopping by Hudson Yards. When I lived in Queens, this was one of the places I would come to the most often. And the views are amazing. And it's just such a nice, sort of pristine environment, and it's very accessible from the 7 train. So I spent a lot of time there. This is Queen's Yard. It's a beautiful, lovely British restaurant that has this insane view of the vessel. So it's been a happy place for me. Similar to the waterfront in Queens, I've spent a lot of time going back and forth from Hudson Yards to waterfront in Long Island City. So this is my neighborhood. And one of my first jobs was here in Hudson Yards as well. It was right down the block on 37th and 10th, leasing apartments to people back in 2008, 2009. And at that time, none of this was here. And it was a really tough sell. And, people had to be convinced that this would eventually work, that this would eventually be a neighborhood where they could really have a great quality of life, because it was just purely warehouses and train tracks, and the High Line hadn't been built yet. And obviously none of these complexes were here. They were all still garages and train yards. So I'll be the first to admit, I didn't think it was going to work. I remember back then thinking to myself, no one's going to want to move to 10th Avenue or to 11th Avenue. And when you look at this now, I mean, it is just gorgeous. It's the most kind of bustling, dynamic neighborhoods that you'll ever find. And it's new and it's gorgeous and everything is luxury. And, it's a trip. It's a trip to have been around this long, in New York, and to see this evolve. I have to pinch myself at times. I've witnessed history. I've witnessed new neighborhoods rise on the island of Manhattan, and it's poetic, isn't it? I mean, it's really, really cool. So I do take time, to appreciate these moments. To be sitting here is, something I never thought would happen. So it's great. It's amazing. And I look forward to feeling that way someday about Nashville as well. I just got there, and, I can already tell that the city has changed tremendously from what it was. And as a New Yorker, you understand gentrification, you understand rapid development. and it can become very easy to become resentful of the change and resentful of the people that are coming to your neighborhood. You feel like you lose your connection to it. With all this influx of new people. But it is ultimately positive. It really adds to the texture. It adds to the dimension of a city or a town when you get this injection of new life and new culture and new energy. And it's happening here in New York constantly. I've been so surprised and so stoked to see so many young people moving here. I think they're responsible for this resurgence that's going on right now in New York. It's been very cool to see. New York has gone through incredibly difficult times over the last 6 or 7 years since COVID, and I really watched it limp along. I watched train cars go by that were totally empty, and it was a scary time, and it's taken years to recover from it. But here in 2026, it seems like we're not far away from New York being what it was, and I look forward to seeing these types of changes in Nashville as well. Downtown Nashville is really similar to something like Times Square. The Broadway scene with all of the honky tonk bars and people coming to experience the energy from all over the world. It has a very similar feeling to Midtown Manhattan. And, you go to, say, for example, East Nashville, and it really kind of feels, grungy and very similar to Brooklyn. It's got an indie music scene. It's got a punk scene. And there are so many different pockets of different cultures, old and new. There are so many cool upstart companies that are doing everything from stage fabrication to, video production to, artist management. It is a music city through and through. And I've just been so impressed with the people that I've worked with. I've got to work a few music events in Nashville, for the Opry Group and for some other, local outlets. And just as front of house or just as part of the event team, and just to get close to, those iconic spaces, work with teams, that are from those venues has already been eye-opening, from a production level, but also to see how they serve the artists and their teams, how they get them ready for the shows, how we handle their access to the venues, to the backstage areas, that sort of thing. It's been really cool to get to see the inner workings of the music space in Nashville, because it really truly is a machine. It's tough to crack in as well. I mean, it's a scene for sure. We're all fortunate to have our personal connections. Some that go back to music school for me, are still starting to come to fruition now and pay off in a way that has resulted in some collaborations and resulted in some co-publishing opportunities. So, I want to build those connections in Nashville. I would love to become a session player, a session songwriter in Nashville and New York and LA. Wherever I'm needed, I'm happy to go there. And some of the calls that I've had this week have really made that clear. Hey, this is what I want to do, and here's how we can help your organization as well. A lot of progress has been made along that front. So, uh, I can't say enough about my collaborators. I want to thank Tom Kari, my old high school friend, for finally releasing 5 a.m. as part of his EP. It's been already such a positive experience, getting to meet the team at Sony behind that record, and just build on my network there, and come back around and be able to work with someone who I know as well as Tom. It's been a lot of fun. And Casey MZUNGU, on the events front, just, I mean, what an amazing partnership. We met at Brooklyn Music Kitchen and we just hit it off. And ever since, we've really vibed, we've connected, we've become fast friends over the past year. And we've really had each other's backs throughout the whole process, whether it's personal stuff or work related or creative stuff that we want to do, and music stuff that we want to do. We're just there for each other. And that's been eye-opening. It's certainly been needed on my part. And I just can't wait for us to build on what we've started here. I really do think it's special. I think we have a real once in a lifetime opportunity to make some waves. And you know what? I'm going to just roll with it. I'm going to do what I do. And there's no place I'd rather be right now than sitting here talking to you guys with this this lovely and familiar view right behind me of New York City, my home, my friend until the end, just like you guys. And thank you once again, folks, for being here, for following along. Please continue to subscribe. As always, I have a lot of plates spinning. I'll get new music to you as soon as I can, and I will announce new show dates as soon as I can. But I am going to finish my margarita and wrap up my time here in New York. I'm going to get back to Nashville. See you guys very soon. Thank you for tuning in. Please follow along Andrew Canlon on Instagram. Subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Don't miss any new releases, and I will be in touch. I love you guys for being here. Shout out to my family and friends. You guys are the reason for everything. Have a great day.